special good morning to the listeners of Classic Radio, the viewers of GBN TV. Good morning. Welcome to today's edition of To The Point. It's the first day of July 2026, folks. Good morning also to those of you via our social media platforms, Facebook page, YouTube channels. Good morning to you. It's a wonderful morning in the Spice Side. I always certainly can say that from my point of view. Someone may not be having a wonderful morning, but for me, it's a wonderful morning for me. Good morning once again. Let me say good morning to my guest on today's edition of To The Point, Mr. Dr. Terence Walters. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice to have you on the program this morning once again.
Yeah, well, good morning, Mr. T, and good morning to all the viewers and listeners everywhere. And it's a beautiful morning. We've been having some rain, and that's really, really, really good.
Yeah, I kind of like that balance sometimes. You know, when you get that little rain and the sun comes out, and the rain comes again.
Yes. We need the rain, right?
No, we need that.
The farmers are happy.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone is really happy.
And you know, we are so blessed with the fertile soil in Grenada.
Yes.
You know, a few weeks ago, you go to certain areas and it was all dry. Mm-hmm. For the last week or two, we've been getting those showers coming in, and the whole place just get by green, like, you know, it was dry.
Almost in an instant.
In
Yes.
a matter of days, I looking at this place a couple of weeks ago, and it was all dry.
Yeah.
Get some rain for a couple of days, and hey, that just disappeared.
Things change.
Just going this way. So we happy for that. There are countries who, of course, may not have that kind of experience.
Yeah.
In terms of how things will just bloom instantly.
Right.
Yeah, we good for that, Grenada. You know, Dr. Walters, our conversation this morning is timely. Hurricane Beryl, certainly around this time, 2 years ago, we saw what happened, you know. Reflecting on the anniversary of Hurricane Beryl, so what is your assessment of Grenada's overall recovery process, in particular Carriacou and Petit Martinique? So let's kick it off like that.
Yeah, well, so it's 2 years, exactly 2 years, and it was in the morning.
Yeah.
It was mid-morning when we had the storm brewing, and the impact was felt greatest in Carriacou, Petit Martinique, and then towards the north we had the northern parishes, St. Patrick, St. Andrew, but the whole island got some impact, and it was so Beryl was what 20 years on from Ivan.
From Ivan. Yes.
20 years on from Ivan, and Ivan was almost 50 years on from Janet. Okay.
Yeah.
So you see, and then we had Emily in between there. All right. So we have to be mindful that while some people may think we're outside of the hurricane belt, that is not so at all. That is not so at all. So we're vulnerable to the hurricanes, and so we had Beryl impacted us, and coming on 2 years now. When I got to Carriacou the morning after Beryl, okay, so we went up on the at first light, the early first boat. We went up to Carriacou, and I looked at the devastation in Carriacou and in Petit Martinique also, because I went to both islands, and I was like, wow, this is serious, okay. But one of the things I noticed early is that the utility poles, many of the utility poles were standing.
Yes.
So you consider
that a plus a bit?
That was a plus.
Yeah.
That was a plus, okay, because I saw hurricane damage in other islands, and so when I saw the utility pole standing, I said, okay, so electricity, that's a plus for electricity, and looking around, looking at all that had happened, I was like, okay, it's going to take a while. But then I continued to visit.
Yeah.
I continued to visit Carriacou and Petit Martinique over a number of weeks, and about 6 to 8 weeks after, I went up and spent 2 nights, and then I said, all right, let me take a drive at night and see. And I saw lights.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw lights. Right? I saw lights. I said, oh, that's a good sign.
That's a plus there.
Yeah, that's a plus. Okay, electricity, because I know how it can feel when there's no electricity, when there's nothing at nights and so. And Carriacou and Petit Martinique, well, even the northern parts of Grenada, progressed steadily. Okay, steadily, quickly, within quick time. We had health services back up, education, transportation, roads were cleared, and communication was back. So the recovery process for those particular issues, right? I am pleased at how they progressed.
All right.
Okay, I'm pleased at how they progressed, past. And so I think Carriacou and Pitimatic have come a very long way. Now, there's one area that we tend to think that is slow, and that's housing. Now, housing will always be slow in after any disaster, because housing is not a matter of you're just going to knock up 2 pieces right for people to go back. Right?
It's a process that has to go through.
Yeah, right. And you have to ensure that, okay, we're rebuilding, but for example, do people have title to the land that we're building on?
Yes.
That's one of the things that you have, because some people may be renting a piece of land, or some people may be just be living on a land that does not belong to them. So you have to sort out all those things, and then you have to ensure that you're building according to the code.
Yes.
You're building code.
And that's critical too, because
yes.
Know that you have seen what the hurricane came and caused. You don't want to have the issue with this reoccurring again, hurricane of that nature, and we go back to the
yes,
to the first stage that we were at.
That's right. So housing will always take a while, and so we have to be patient. Okay, because we want to build back better, stronger. We building to last. Okay, and not just better, because you can build better, or we're not building to last. But you want to build houses that will last, that will be able to withstand the next hurricane. So we must be mindful of that. And so I think based on what I have seen for Carriacou, Pitimatic, we've come a long way as it relates to recovery from Hurricane Beryl.
I mean, and this is lead up to my next question. How far along are we in rebuilding critical infrastructure that will, of course, be more resilient, against, let's say, a category 4, category 5? How far along are we in that, in your opinion, as you state right now?
Yeah, I think we still have some work to do, because some of the repairs that we did, right, we have to ensure that we go back, because you want to repair as quickly as possible. Good, so that you can get back to normal, right? But you still need to now go back and do the assessments to ensure that, okay, we repaired this building, we put back on a roof, but can we or should we, right, do additional work to ensure that these buildings, these structures can withstand the category 4, category 5? Because what we're seeing now is that no longer are we just having a storm, because when you hear a storm, you hear a depression turn into a storm. The next thing you know, it's category 5.
Yes.
Okay, that's what's happening.
And the instant in which it develops these days, how instant it develops. Some time ago, you may hear in a matter of days, something develops, but in a matter of hours, sometimes. In a matter of hours, we hear how we've gone from one particular stage to another.
You go from category 1, and the next thing they tell you is category 3 or category 4 or 5. Quickly, within hours. So we have to be very mindful of that. That these hazards are becoming more frequent, more intense, and we need to be prepared. But definitely, we've done some rebuilding, some reconstruction, but I think there's still more to be done, and there would always be more to be done.
Let me ask you this. You spoke about this. I mean, maybe from your understanding and from the information you have gathered, you talk about revisiting, especially critical infrastructure that is something that could benefit citizens in terms of critical storms and stuff like that. Are we been going back? Have the authorities, of course, NaDMA, of course, this information will come to you if you are receiving them in a timely manner. I've been going back and revisiting, especially the buildings that were repaired, and checking them and make sure what should have been done in terms of getting them to that resilience level. Have you been receiving information on that?
Yeah, I can only speak to the ones that are emergency shelters. Okay. So the shelter inspection team has been doing the assessments. Okay. So I can speak to that, and yes, so they have done the assessments. They've made some recommendations. Okay, great. Yes.
And I certainly hope we could hear that conversation, housing authority, and so share that information. The homes are being rebuilt. We have gone and reassessed them. and saying, well, I've seen this particular structure that's built to the standard that can have a level of resilience, save lives, and so forth, and minimize the destruction that we see happen when we can have this nature come around. I want to ask you this question though. What are some of the biggest lessons NaDMA may have learned from burial that have changed how you may be operating today?
All right. There are some critical areas. So, for example, shelter management.
Yes.
All right. One of the lessons is that we need to do continuous preparation for shelters, because whenever there's an emergency, people will go to the shelters. But again, we deal with volunteers, so we have to be mindful that although we need more than 1,000 volunteers for our shelters, because we have 100 plus shelters, and each shelter needs about 10 volunteers, we need to have maybe 1,500 volunteers, because some will definitely not show up for whatever reason. So we need to have more managers for our shelters. So that's one area. Communication. Emergency communication, and we need to strengthen our emergency communication capability. We've done some work in that area, okay, but that's another area that we have we definitely have to continue to work on. And then there's the issues of transportation among the islands. Because government only owns the two small Coast Guard vessels, and the other boats are owned privately. So in terms of transporting relief among the islands, Glen, Carriacou, Petite Martinique, okay, that is an area that we have looked at, and we continue to look at that area because it's critical, right? You don't have an international airport or an airport that can take any large aircraft. You only have a small airport in Carriacou. So we've been discussing, how we can strengthen that whole issue about transportation among the islands, transporting people, transporting cargo, relief items, and that is something that we. So those are some of the areas, and then the whole area, the whole issue of our community or district functions, because we have to decentralize. We must decentralize. It cannot just be the headquarters at Monjaloo, right? So we have emergency operation centers, one at River Sally, one at Black Bay, one at Pearls, then we have one at Carriacou and one at Petite Martinique. So we have to decentralize and have the capabilities at these different centers so that if one area is cut off, at least
they can manage themselves.
They can manage themselves, right? And we do have the district emergency operation centers, and we were working towards strengthening, conducting trainings, and so we had the national exercise recently, which provided a good platform for us to give our teams some opportunity to practice. So those are some of the areas that that we must say that we've looked at and learned, even in our healthcare, because after any event, healthcare is something that you must provide. The healthcare workers are impacted also, because they would lose homes, family members, whatever it is, right?
As any other citizen.
As any other citizen. But we expect them to provide twice as much service as in normal times after the hurricane. So healthcare, and I know the Ministry of Health, has been working to ensure that the healthcare facilities around the island are strengthened. Strengthen the facilities, and even the healthcare workers, working with them to ensure that they're able to provide the services after any event. So quite a number of areas.
Okay, great. You spoke something in relation to communication, especially on an emergency level. You've been hearing conversation in certain service providers are now, want to make sure that this is emergency system that is up and ready just in case. How do you feel in relation to that particular subject matter? Has NaDMA been paying a lot of attention to that also? Because we know what's going on. We hear what happened in of course, Venezuela just a couple of days ago, and other parts around the world that happen in case when emergency do take place. And sometimes the lack of communicating with citizens at a level that could get them ready. You know, a lot of the time folks may more pay attention to, something of a negative nature being on their phones or on their gadgets rather than something of an emergency nature. How much of a concern is that for NaDMA, and how happy is NaDMA to know that, the communication companies want to have that alert system being ready there to send information, when an emergency do occur at an instant?
Yeah, so that's the cell broadcast, and then the common alerting protocol, and we're very happy about that. Very happy about that, because the early warnings for all is pretty important, right? Early warnings for all. And now, actually, we're having a workshop next week, to talk about early warnings for all and kick start the process in Grenada. Now, it is very important to have communication, and we have enhanced our communication capacity. One of the things is that after an event, or let's say during an event, after the event, you will find that your communication system will be impacted. Yes. So, right? So, at least you try to have redundancy. So, for example, the handheld radios, right? Or handheld radios, this system. Now, if this system works very well before an event, what we've done is that we have handheld radios for every shelter. So we no longer do we need to make cell phone calls or that kind of thing. Okay. So each shelter plus your staff and so forth, they have a radio. So when you broadcast one message, everybody would hear the message. Right. So before the event, communication has been significantly improved. Right. Now, during the event and maybe after the event, we may have some challenges, okay, so which we anticipate. But what we have done, so we have the satellite phones. Okay. So we've deployed satellite phones to our critical areas, Prime Minister, Karakou, Petit Martinique, the police, the Governor General, these areas we've deployed satellite phones. And then some of the other private entities like, Nawasa, Glen, airport, different people, right? They have satellite phones. So we'll be able to make contact with the outside world or contact, among the people that have satellite phones. We've shared like a phone book of satellite phone numbers. So we have done some work in terms of ensuring that we have, some redundancy, right, with our communication. But in terms of the citizens and having the information, we want to continue to work to ensure that people don't just use their cell phone or their computers to look at negative things, look at political things, but get information on disaster management, disaster preparedness, know the hazards, know how they can impact you, know what you can do to prepare your household, prepare yourself, prepare your workplace. Those are the things that we want people to research on and have information so they can make better decisions. Okay, great. So what do we do for a break? Let's take it. When we come back, we continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks. To the Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We're coming right back. Don't touch it out.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic. Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy. Wow, that was such a breeze. Own your home with ease. So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time. Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize. Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank. Republic Bank, we're the one for you. Terms and conditions apply. The energy and vibe of Spice Mass is once upon us again. I am the backpack and ready. And the road to the Monarch begins with the Power Soca preliminaries. Thursday, July 2nd, 10 Deadbolt Court, St. George from 7 p.m. Then we move on to St. David. Friday, July 3rd, La Sagesse Hard Court. Saturday, July 4th, Sattes Bush Terminal, St. Patrick. And concludes at the Cuthbert Peters Park in Gore. On Sunday, July 5th, competition begins nightly at 7 p.m. Admission absolutely free. So link up the posse. Roll out with the entourage. Spice Mass Power Soca preliminaries is on Thursday, July 2nd to Sunday, July 5th. Every artist deserves the support. I am the backpack and ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, What?
Here is an invitation to join me this and every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. on GBN Television 711 K105 FM, our Facebook page and YouTube channel for Kaiso Talk. Meet the Kaisonians, hear their stories, feel the vibes. Kaiso Talk, Wednesdays 8:30 p.m. Compliments for Grenville Credit Union.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back. We have, of course, Dr. Waters with us this morning, and of course, our conversation will be speaking, of course, the second anniversary of Hurricane Beryl. Are we going through the whole process this morning in terms of conversation? We know the 2026 hurricane season is already upon us. We hear what's been going on. I want to touch on this particular, because just for the benefit for our listeners. For listeners who may not know, how does NaDMA work along in hand with the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency? That's NaDMA during crisis. Talk to me about it. How does NaDMA work along with that?
So NaDMA is the overall body, the CARICOM organ for disaster management and response in the region. Okay, and there are 20 participating states, and so NaDMA provides a regional context, provides assistance, and when we have our regular meetings during the year, regular trainings. There's a meeting for all the national disaster coordinators, okay, which this year it was held in British Virgin Island. Then all the permanent secretaries responsible for disaster management, there's a meeting for them, and then all the ministers responsible for disaster management, there's a meeting for them. That meeting was held in Trinidad last Friday, and so whenever there's an event in the region, NaDMA will respond. Okay, they will provide. Sometimes they send in advance personnel. Like in Jamaica, they had enough time, and they could have sent in persons before. Okay, and then after the event, now they would send in the rapid needs assessment team. Okay, and then there's the other CDRU. Okay, the disaster response units. They would send them in. These are made up mostly of police officers and soldiers from the different territories to go in and assist with relief and rebuilding and so NaDMA plays a very significant role in disaster management in the region, and we saw it after Hurricane Beryl in Grenada, right, where NaDMA sent in the rapid needs assessment team, and they were able to provide that report so that the government can use that report, for the international and regional organizations, so to get funding and so that is one area. And then we had personnel coming in to assist in your emergency operation centers, because after the event, right, the country and the human resources trained very strained, and so you need assistance because most of the disaster offices around the region are small offices.
True.
Okay, very small offices, and so you're impacted. You're working straight, you're tired. You need people to come in and and provide some level of assistance. And NaDMA does that. We had the executive director visit after Hurricane Beryl and spend time in Carriacou and in Petite Martinique. Okay, so she was able to go there. So NaDMA works closely with all the participating states to provide assistance and to provide some guidance and direction in disaster management across the region.
And it's also leads to my note. How does the regional response mechanism ensures that small islands like Grenada get that immediate help when the local communication and infrastructure fails? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so NaDMA does have emergency communication unit.
Yeah.
All right, which they test frequently, and so after Beryl, they sent in 2 persons to work in Carriacou and Petite Martinique to assist with the emergency communication, and so they provide a lot of assistance before and after the events, so that we can have the kind of equipment that's needed, and if after the event we would have assistance because your emergency comms person may be impacted.
So true.
Okay, may be impacted for whatever reason.
Yeah, but some may lose their home, so their focus may not be, even though they are trained to do that, but sometimes their focus gets distracted.
That's right. You may very well be impacted. So NaDMA would send in personnel to assist with that. So they provide assistance in many different areas, I must say.
All right, great. Nice to hear that. So, piggybacking on this, I want to, as I mentioned in my intro also, the 2026 hurricane season, the prediction, the outlook for this year. Are we know, as we know in 2026 season, so what are the specific predictions telling us about the intensity of the frequency of storms this year from your information?
Now, I sometimes say that I wish there were no predictions, right?
Yeah.
I sometimes say that. Okay, but that's just a personal thing. Okay, but let's talk about the 2026 season, and then I'll come back to what I was saying here. The average. Okay, on average, okay, you expect 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. That's the average.
Yes.
Okay. Over the years, when they measure it and they do the calculations, the average. This year, the prediction is between 8 to 14 named storms, 3 to 6 hurricanes, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes. So the prediction for this year is slightly below normal. So there's a 35% chance of it being normal, 10% chance of it being above normal, and 55% chance of it being below normal. Okay. So we anticipate that the season in 2026 will be below normal or just about normal. But I must say here that, and that's why I said sometimes I wish there were no predictions. Good. Now, whether the prediction is normal, above normal, or below normal, it only takes one storm to disrupt.
Okay.
Now let's go back to last year. Last year we were going along nicely and hoping that everything would be fine. There would be no, when we got down to October, some people started breathing a sigh of relief. All right, we're in October, so we should be good. And then we saw what happened with Melissa in Jamaica.
Yes.
Right, that's down in October. All right, and so it only takes one storm, because last year we only had one major impact, and that was in Jamaica. So it takes one storm to disrupt things.
Yeah.
So whether the prediction is above normal, normal, or below normal, we need to prepare as though we are going to be impacted.
How serious do we take the approach to predictions? That's not my point of view. Sometimes I wonder how serious do we take the predictions. Nothing may have happened, but how serious is predictions from a NaDMA point of view? How serious is that?
Yeah, and we have to take the prediction seriously, right? We have to take it seriously. We have to, when they say it's going to be, very active, well, then we expect a lot more activity than when it's going to be, below normal. So we have to take it seriously, but we have to take the whole season. Once we get into the hurricane season, we have to take that seriously, despite, okay, because again, I want to repeat. It only takes one storm or one serious meteorological event. We can have an event that dump a lot of water, just a lot of water. It doesn't have to be a storm or a depression, okay? But a trough system or something dumping a lot of water on you, and you can end up with some trouble. Like we had, I think it was 2 years ago when we had the flooding. Yeah, right.
I was impacted seriously by that.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Just that event lasted about an hour and caused so much damage. So we have to be mindful of those things. That despite the predictions, we need to take all these events seriously and be prepared at all times. Yeah. So we're preparing this year, although we're saying that it's going to be a little below average, we're preparing as though we're going to get a storm.
Yeah.
Right? We're preparing as though we're going to get a hurricane. Be prepared, because you do not know if that one will impact Grenada.
All right.
We don't know. Okay, so we can't let our guards down and behave as, it's going to be below normal this year, man, so no problem, right? No, we're preparing as though a storm can impact us.
Yeah, so true. It took my mind with something you said in terms of preparation, because I was listening. Sometime I go through the broadcast of other Caribbean islands and listen to their conversation they have in relation. We're going to be having the super El Nino and stuff this year. But I find it was limited coming from Grenada. In terms of that, I mean, I understand that there's other conversation that we've had from time to time, and other things that may not have been made public. But it's important to keep the mindset of the citizens always, making sure that we have a level of readiness. And sometimes I find I get that lack from NaDMA in terms of that. I mean, I'm not sure if I hope you don't feel there's a beat up on you.
No.
Because sometimes I said, well, I'm not hearing anything, and we hear in other islands. I listen to Jamaica and I listen to Barbados, and they're speaking about these things all the time. But sometimes we hear the conversation is minimal from us.
Right. And I must say that that is one area that the agency needs to improve. Right. I must say that. Now we have a public education and information committee headed by Government Information Service, and in recent times they have been trying to ensure that they function well and do some additional work. But there is more that needs to be done. So I agree with you, right? So it's not a beat up, because I like when people can say to me, "Hey, this is what we've seen," and I can say to them, "Yes, that is what it is, and we need to work to improve on this."
Yes.
So our public education, we definitely need to work to improve on in that area. So thanks for that, and I will ensure that I speak to the Public Education and Information Committee. That's Mr. Philip and the team, to ensure that we enhance that area.
It's just that keeping the public mind abreast, because their minds always get scattered with other things, and I think we in a particular season, I think that should be one of the conversations should be embedded in our minds on a constant level. I'm not saying every minute, every second of the day, but there'll be at times that public service information are going out where we are more, the information is more gathered in that particular direction.
Yes.
So that we always keep on my day. We into that particular season. That's something I find information is very minimal. Right. If we don't go online and find out ourselves, we're not hearing from departments should disseminating this kind of information to us from time to time. If you get where I'm coming from.
Sure, yeah, so I mean, thanks for that. Thanks for pointing that out. And like I say, we will definitely take that on board to see how we can enhance and improve. You often
advocate for comprehensive disaster management. Can you break down simply for our audience what is meant by in daily practice?
So, comprehensive disaster management, CDM, the focus of NaDMA, it's the management of all hazards through all phases by all people. All right. Simply put. So I don't want to give the technical definition, but it is the management of all hazards, okay, all hazards, both natural and man-made, okay, through all of the phases, and if you do the phases before, during, after, by all people. So all hazards, again, we're breaking it down and we're saying that the natural ones that exist in the natural environment, the storms and the earthquakes and volcanoes and so forth, right? These are natural. Man-made fires and accidents and computer viruses and, all those things that can be induced by man. So we have natural and man-made. Now, managing those by through all of the phases. So again, before the event, what do we do? Like now, we're here talking. All right, it's before any event. Right? No event has occurred or is occurring, but it's before the event,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Then during, what do we do? Or our emergency operation centers, or how we get people into our shelters. So that's during, right? And then after, okay, how do we manage the recovery process, the rebuilding process? So that is comprehensive disaster management. Previously, we focused a lot on relief. So we wait for something to happen, and then afterwards we provide relief, we food and water and clothing and so forth. Yeah. But now it's a focus on ensuring that people understand the hazards. So you have to understand them, know how they could affect you, okay, and take decisions, okay, take decisions for you and your family and your community as to how we can respond to this to minimize the loss of life, minimize the damage to property. So that is what comprehensive disaster management is all about. And it says that all people. Now, that is important. Not just the police or the 12 staff at NaDMA or the health services, not just them or the people on the radio. It's everybody playing a part. Okay, from you at home, knowing the emergency numbers and putting your documents together in a waterproof bag.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's part of it. Okay, to the businesses having their disaster plans in place, to the government having policies and legislation. All of that should come together to ensure that as a nation, okay, we can respond to any hazard that can impact us.
Tell me, how prepared is Grenada, especially the key sectors, like the health, agriculture, tourism, to execute a comprehensive approach to this? How tell me about it.
It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. And I tell you that because we got legislation passed in 2023. Yes. Good? And sometime in 2024, 25, at a forum, I said to the participants, over the next 10 years, okay, I anticipate that there will be significant improvement in disaster management in Grenada. Good? Yeah. I said, and they were like, 10 years? That's so long. But given the circumstances, all right, you just have your legislation and you're just working with your stakeholders to ensure that people have plans, to ensure that people conduct drills, prepare you have your national exercise, enhance your shelter readiness and all of that. That would take time, right? It wouldn't happen overnight. It will not happen overnight.
Sometimes lackadaisical in terms of the approach in terms of doing that here in Grenada sometimes.
Sometimes, right? Yeah. Sometimes, but it's a process. Okay, it's a process over time. And if we continue to work, we have to continue because it's changing mindset. All right, it's ensuring that people understand that the whole issue of preparedness is something that should be ingrained. We should ensure that whenever we talk safety. Whenever we plan, we're planning with safety in mind. If you're going to have an event, so for example, a group of people going on a hike, you ensure that you have a first aid kit, somebody who you have good communication, somebody who knows first aid, so that kind of thing. That's what we're talking about. The whole issue of safety and preparedness, right, throughout our country, and that will take time to build. It will not happen just overnight. We wouldn't just get up one morning and realize that everybody is prepared. It will take time. It's a process.
That's so true. I mean, we drew for a break, but I want to get this out to you before. How sometimes we have the tendency to focus a lot on hurricanes in our neck of the woods, and it's understandable. But Grenada faces multiple hazards from time to time. how do we prepare the public for concurrent disasters, for major storms hitting while we managing a disease, an outbreak, volcano watch? You never know. Tell me about that.
Well, we can just go back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yeah.
In 2021, when they had the volcano, the eruption of the volcano, and they had flooding at the same time.
Yeah.
All right, and we were in the pandemic. Yeah. Okay, so you had all of that dealing with at that time, and if I go back to I think 2 years ago, 2024, in February, we had for the Kikem Jenny.
Yes.
Right, we had elevated activity at Kikem Jenny, and at the same time we had the oil spill off Tobago, which we were monitoring closely because it could have impacted us. So we live in a multi-hazard environment that we can have more than one of the hazards occurring at any time. So that's why we're asking people to be prepared year-round. It's not only during the hurricane season, but year-round you have to be prepared. You have to ensure that you have your disaster supplies kit and all of that. So yes, we do live in a multi-hazard environment that we need to prepare for.
All right, we drew for a break. Let's take it. We come back, we continue. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point. Classic Radio GBN TV. We will be right back after the short break. Stay with us. Don't touch it out.
Republic Bank explains. Security features.
GBN Massology is back. We're officially on the road to spice up the Carronage 3.0, and it all starts here. Live from GBN Studios every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Streaming across GBN platforms, bringing pure energy, culture, and spice man's vibes straight to your screen. Hosted by Charlton, powered by Graphic Sound System, featuring fresh faces and seasoned stars. Massology is where the culture takes center stage. WhatsApp 407-8458 now to secure your spot on Massology. And don't miss the repeat broadcast at 8:30 p.m. This is Massology, the heartbeat of Spice Mass. Don't miss it.
And the road to the Mona begins with the Power Soca preliminaries. Thursday, July 2nd, Santine Digbo Court, St. George from 7 p.m. Then we move on to St. David. Friday, July 3rd, La Sanchez Hard Court. Saturday, July 4th, Sutton's Burst Terminal, St. Patrick. And concludes at the Cuthbert Peters Park in Guelph. On Sunday, July 5th, competition begins nightly at 7 p.m. Admission absolutely free. So link up the posse. Roll out with the entourage. Spice Mass Power Soca preliminaries is on Thursday, July 2nd to Sunday, July 5th. Every artist deserves the support.
Hello Grenada, this is Blackadan. On the 18th of July, I'm welcoming you to Radisson Hotel Car Park for the second installment of Groovy White.
Groovy White, a celebration of groovy music. Blackadan. Faminapi. Nyla Blackman.
It's your girl Nyla Blackman, and I will be performing live at Groovy White.
College boy Jesse. Cristo, Alma Boy, Angie Boy, Happy Boy, Inspector, Lava Man, Feline Mandela Lakes, Mr. Killer, Sabrina Francis, and Riggy Atmosphere. Grenadian host, Reese, and live from Trinidad, Sunny Bling. General tickets, $100. VIP, only $500. Groovy, White, Radisson Car Park, 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Saturday, July 18th. Sponsors.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to our viewers. It's To The Point Classic Radio. We have, of course, Mr. Walters with us this morning. And, of course, we talk in disaster management, disaster preparedness. We spoke a wee bit about, the anniversary of, Hurricane Beryl. I want to get into a critical subject matter here, and this is important. And we're talking in terms of, shelter inspection, the management, and so forth. What is the current status of emergency shelters across Grenada, sir? And have the structures damaged by Beryl been fully repaired and replaced thus far?
Right. So in terms of the structures being repaired, yes, some of them. Right, not all. Some of them have been repaired and are back on the list of emergency shelters. So we have the inspection taking place from January to April each year. Yeah. Right. During that period, we do the inspection, and then the inspection team, because there's a team. Okay, it's not the staff at NaDMA, right? The staff is involved, but there's a team. You have engineer and from housing, from environment and health and so forth, going around to inspect the shelters, look at them, look at the structure, look at where they're located and the suitability and so forth to be used as an emergency shelter. The shelters are not or may not be perfect. All right, it would not be perfect, but then once the team is satisfied that the building can be used as an emergency shelter, then it's placed on the list. So we've just released the list for 2026 yesterday. Okay. It's a bit late this year. All right, it's a bit late this year, but we've released it yesterday, so it's being circulated, to the general population. The list of emergency shelters for 2026-2027. Okay, so that's the inspection process, and we inspect all the buildings, Grenada, Carriacou, Petite Martinique, and the teams will go around and inspect them, and then provide a list and say these are the buildings. Now there's what is called secondary shelters and primary shelters. So you have primary, secondary. The primary shelters are the list that we give to the public. Okay, right. These are the buildings that you can go to if there is an event occurring, or pending, like there's a hurricane approaching. You can go to these buildings. Once the government gives a time, you proceed. Now, the secondary shelters are those buildings that can be used after the event. So if they stand up to the event, and after the event you need additional buildings, then these will be used, but they cannot be used to shelter people for the event. So that's the difference between primary and secondary shelters. Okay. So we have that done, and then we also provide a report to the government and says, well, these buildings need these additional repairs to be able to get back onto the list. So we do that. Right. So it's a comprehensive process, and we do that every year.
I want you to talk to me about the protocol in place that to ensure that shelters are not just for physically safe, but also the property management, the food, water, medical supplies, and so forth. Talk to me in relation to that. Because sometimes you hear conversation, and maybe you could give me a bit of understanding of the process that has to go through, especially when it comes to shelter management.
So there are the shelter managers in place.
Yes.
Okay, and the buildings that we use are schools, churches, community centers and 1 or 2 private buildings. But you have a shelter management team in place. So when you get there will be a team that will register you and, set up the shelter, decide who is sleeping where, how we dividing the people to sleep comfortably and all of that. Now, what we advise is that when you're going to the shelter, walk with supplies, 2 to 3 days supplies.
Yes.
All right, as much as possible. Walk with things like food stuff, canned foods and dried foods and so on, non-perishable. Walk with your things like your blanket if you need a blanket, your medication. So there are things you walk with that you would need at the shelter. Now, the shelters are not outfitted with food and medicines and all of that, because remember, it's schools, it's community centers. So when you have to go to the shelters, you do not expect those things to be there at the shelter. Okay, so we ask you to walk with them. Now the event will come, and after the event, if people have to remain at the shelters, then we can. The government will look into providing foodstuff, providing for the shelters, and then they can probably when people start to go back home and so forth, that will be reduced. But if it's a real catastrophic event, people would stay in the shelters a little longer.
Yes.
I mean, after Beryl, we activated all the shelters, and then within a couple of days, the shelters were closed. That's on mainland. In Carriacou, the shelters remained open much longer, and they got food, and they were provided with cots and different things.
Okay.
But we do encourage people to please, when you're coming to the shelter, walk with your supplies, because you mean it's not a hotel you're going to, right? Remember, it's an emergency shelter. It's not the same as a home, or it's not a hotel or a guest house or anything like that, but it's an emergency shelter, and you need to walk with things that will make you comfortable at the shelter until the authorities can provide additionally.
All right. I certainly hope folks do understand that, of course. And at the time of the the event that you keep saying, folks the authorities may not be ready to supply everything in an instant.
In an instant, that's right.
You understand? So that's understandable.
And it will take time, the logistics and all of that. So we have to be mindful.
All right. We get to that stage where we're going to invite our listeners. We have approximately 7 minutes left on the program, so we could, of course, entertain some calls from our listeners and viewers this morning. 435-2041. We do have the first caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Welcome.
Greetings, Mr. Telesford. Greetings and
good morning, sir.
To Mr. Walters. Mr. Walters, the United Nations established a convention on the rights of persons with disabilities. It stipulates in Article 11, which deals with situations of risk and humanitarian assistance. Further down, it explains clearly what state parties are supposed to do, if we were to say, as it relates to the population with disabilities, where protocols have to be established in all the different forms, informative forms, whether it be blind in braille or verbally recordings. People with disability, with visual, with auditive difficulty, hearing problems, with sign language and other words. Over the years, we've been complaining about this. Can you tell us how far you have reached in establishing these protocols so that the people with disabilities, whatever, may have their rights fulfilled according to international norms? Sir, thank you very much for what it's worth. You have a nice day. Will you, Mr. Telesford, sir?
You too, sir. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir. And yes, so I mentioned 10 years, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned 10 years. But I mean, 10 years sounds long. But what I can say is that over the past few years, we have been working to ensure that we cater for persons with disabilities. So for Beryl, right, we had somebody doing sign language for all of the broadcasts.
Yes.
Okay. Our emergency shelters, we have tried to ensure that most of them, okay, have ramps and assistive devices so that persons with disabilities on wheelchairs and so can be accommodated. And then next week we have the early warnings for all kickoff workshop that will address those issues, right? And so we continue to address those issues and continue to work toward ensuring that we improve our services for persons living with disabilities, because we do understand that we must cater for them, okay, in every single way. So it's a work in progress. And thank you for raising it again, my dear friend, Mr. Rolo.
All right, we do have another caller. Yes. Caller via WhatsApp, you're live. Good morning, welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Walter. Good morning, GT.
Good morning.
And your listeners and your viewers. Now, I was going to ask a question along the line the first caller called, in terms of priority, not necessarily just about people with disability, but people, for instance, the elderly who would need special assistance. You have some people who, for various reasons, they are on their own and so on. What sort of system of prioritizing? Who give first preference to enter the shelters? And how are we going to ensure that when something comes up, that announcement don't just go on the radio and say report to that shelter, because sometimes the shelters are quite a bit a distance away from where people live. And also, we talk a lot about hurricanes, but I think we should be emphasized, and not saying they should do that now, but in terms like, look what is happening in Venezuela. The fact that even affect Trinidad, I mean, there's parts of Trinidad have been affected physically, and people may not know that, maybe not with death and so on, but we need to really get our people with a mindset that certain things can happen to us anytime, not out of fear, but that they're out of being alert and being responsible. People ask me the question, if a tsunami comes, the average person knows what to do. These are things we need to incorporate that. Just as how the advertisers...
Well, we are a bit strapped for time, eh? We are a bit strapped for time.
Yeah, I know. Just I'm finishing now. Just as the advertisers do every day, they trying to get us to buy things. We should be doing something like that and helping people to be minded of that, and also to be community-minded. We are selfish people. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much.
All right. I know there are people who work diligently to ensure that our communities are prepared. We have our district teams, 17 of them, and they do an excellent job. There's need for improvement. There's room for improvement, but they do an excellent job. In terms of priority, when the shelters are activated, so we don't say we don't prioritize who should go to the shelter. Right? Those who need to go to the shelter will go, but the shelter management team will be on hand to probably, okay, if there's somebody who is in a wheelchair, an elderly person also, right, you can accommodate them, okay, before the other people who, so the shelter management teams will do that, okay, and there are some other points that the caller raised, but I would have to come back because I know we're out of time. I will have to come back to deal with those things.
All right. So we get into the take a wrap, but I want to ask you one final question, of course, and I hope we can answer it briefly. How can neighbors look out for the vulnerable, like the elderly, or disabled in immediate communities when the season peaks? Yeah. Have you give me a brief response on that, and then we take a wrap?
Yeah, we had a very good examples of that for Hurricane Ivan, where a lot of the younger people in the communities reached out and brought the senior citizens to the shelters. Yeah. Okay, and so our district teams, okay, they have a process of knowing who are the vulnerable people in the community. So district teams, they work with their members to know who is living where. These people need help, and neighbors can definitely do that. You know that your neighbor is unable to move. When something happens, you make the report and say, okay, I have this neighbor. We need to get them to the shelter. The shelter is open. You go to the shelter management people and say, hey, this is what is happening here. Let's do something. So, but I think we have a very good community spirit around the country.
Especially when the disasters occur. Yeah, we know of one is occurring. Some folks, the mood changes for some reason.
That's right. I mean, it's not everybody, but there's a general very good community spirit in Grenada and good volunteer spirit in Grenada. So we just need to harness that and work toward ensure that we enhance that and make Grenada a much better prepared place for any of the hazards that can and will impact us.
All right, Mr. Dr. Walters, I want to thank you once again. It's always a pleasure to have you. Of course, you know, we're into the season.
Yes.
So I know it's not going to be just a one-off visit this time around.
Yes.
You know, as time draws closer and, of course, more information needs to be disseminated, I'm sure we'll have you back to speak about more. It may not be onto the point, but there are other areas on the station, other programs, per se, you can pop in and share. Thank you once again, sir.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Hey, folks, that's something to take a wrap for today's edition of To The Point. Thanks all who contributed. Have a good one, folks. That's where we say goodbye for today.